shots have been fired at Princess Anne and Captain Phillips. They escaped, but 4 people were hit, 1 seriously. Good evening. There's been an assassination attempt on Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips, but they escaped unhurt. The gunman opened fire on their car 200 yards from Buckingham Palace. Their private detective, their chauffeur, and a policeman on point duty were wounded in the shooting. So was a man who was walking past. The policeman was shot in the stomach and is undergoing an emergency operation. Princess Anne and Captain Phillips escaped injury, although a spokesman from Buckingham Palace said they're obviously very shaken. The shooting happened at the top of the Mall as they were returning from a private film show in aid of the Riding for the Disabled Association. Their car, a maroon Rolls-Royce, was forced into the side of the road by a white Ford Escort, which blocked their route to the palace, and a man jumped out and started shooting. At least 5 shots were fired at their car, and the bullets shattered the windows of a passing taxi. Their private detective, Station Sergeant James Beaton, and their chauffeur, Mr. Callender, were in the front of the car. Station Sergeant Beaton, who was appointed to Princess Anne on her wedding day last November, was taken to Westminster Hospital. His condition isn't known. Only minutes earlier, Princess Anne was receiving a bouquet from Marietta Dami, who's 16, at the Riding for the Disabled Association, where she's been shown a horse-riding film in which the princess was featured. Then, as Princess Anne travelled back to the palace, the shooting happened. A car containing plainclothes policemen was following behind the royal car. When the shooting started, it overtook the car, jumped out and grappled with the gunman. Dozens of other police swarmed into the area. Later, a man was helping police with their inquiries at Cannon Row Police Station. Besides police reinforcements, the army was also called in, as one of the casualties were taken to hospital. From the Mall, Norman Rees reports.
Well, after the shooting, the Mall is completely closed off here tonight. Up behind me here, several dozen police cars. I gather about 100 policemen drafted in from all over central London. Now, the story, as far as we know it, is this. Princess Anne and Mark Phillips were on their way either to or from Buckingham Palace when a car drove in front of their official vehicle and stopped it. Now, a gunman got out and fired several shots through the windscreen. As I understand it, the driver and Princess Anne's bodyguard were hurt. Then a policeman on point duty ran up. He was turned on by the gunman and shot at point-blank range. Well, sorry about that loss of film, but what is clear tonight is that Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips had a very remarkable escape from serious injury. From what we know of the incident, the gunman who'd been travelling in a white Ford Escort fired at least 6 shots from a pistol. Some of these are said to have gone right through the royal car and, in fact, injured people travelling in a following car. A policeman at point duty at St. James's Palace ran up. I understand the gunman fired a number of shots at him. He's been taken to hospital with stomach wounds. The gunman, and there are a few details of who or what he is, was overpowered by plainclothes police, and as in normal practice, they were following behind the royal car. All this happened within 300 yards of Buckingham Palace, and that's where Princess Anne and Captain Phillips have been taken tonight. Well, with me now is somebody who witnessed the whole incident, Miss Sammy Scott. Miss Scott, you were travelling, I understand, just in front of the royal car. What, in fact, happened?
Well, I was driving along quite slowly, and suddenly a car shot in front of me and pulled over to the side, and I pulled up a bit further on, rather sort of annoyed, you know, that he'd cut right in front of me. And I got out of the car, and as I got out, I suddenly heard what I thought were toy pistol shots, you know, and a chap in front of me in a taxi had also got out, and he was just in front of me, and he got shot. He was all sort of covered in blood and things. And then the pavement side of the car opened, and I saw a woman getting out in a pink dress, and I suppose she was Princess Anne's lady-in-waiting, but she got out and she was crouching down on all fours and trying to come out. And I went up to her and I said, "What's happening?" And she said, "Get down! There's a maniac loose, you know, somebody shooting." So I got down automatically and asked what was happening, and she said Princess Anne was in the car. And then I got up and I went over. There was a gun that had fallen on the floor. Near the pavement.
What, this was just outside the royal car, was it, this gun?
Yeah, on the by the pavement side. And the gunman by this time had gone over to the other side, and he was really sort of shaking the door and trying to get in.
Into the royal car?
Into the royal car, yeah. And Princess Anne and Mark were completely on their own. There's nobody else in the car at all. And they were sort of huddled over to the other side. And I went over to the gun on this side, and I went to pick it up. And I said, why isn't anybody picking it up? And I went to pick it up, and somebody said, don't touch it, there might be fingerprints on it. So I left it alone. And then a man fell down in front of me, and he was shot in the stomach, I think. And I bent down, put my hanky there to try and stop the blood. It was all sort of coming out. And then another man came along, and I looked up and I said, this man's been shot, can you get an ambulance? And he opened his jacket and he said, yes, I have too. And there was blood all over him. And 2 seconds, and I sort of said to him, awful thing, I said to him, well, why don't you lie down? Terrible thing to say, really. I didn't realise what I was saying. And 2 seconds later, he collapsed. And now I think he was one of the policemen.
You actually got into the royal car?
Yeah, yes, and then I was waiting for the ambulance to come along and for the policeman to come along, and then some police arrived, and Princess Anne and Mark tried to get out of the car on the pavement side. The gunman was on the other side of the car, and he
trying to get in.
Trying to get in, yeah.
Was he firing the gun at this stage?
Well, yes, I think he was, but I thought there must be bulletproof windows because nothing seemed to sort of go in through that window. It went in through the back window, but not through the sides. And he saw that they were trying to get out of the other side. They had the door open, and Mark had just got out and Anne was following. And he came shooting around the front of the car and went to fire the gun at them again. They scrambled back into the car, and about 6 or 7 policemen by that time had arrived, and they converged on the gunman and got him down. And as they were hustling him off, I ran to the car and I got in and asked them if they were all right. And Princess Anne was...
What did you say to them?
I wasn't thinking. I just sort of ran in and I said, "You're all right, love," And Princess Anne was sweet. She just sort of looked up and said, "Yes, I'm fine, thank you." And Mark had his arm around her, very protective sort of way, and he sort of looked up. And I didn't realise that they were together until he looked up. And then they said they were all right. And then they got out the other side and were hustled into another car. I don't know what the gun was. It was certainly a small gun. It was... I think what's called a pistol, a little tiny one. Yeah. The one that I saw on the floor, and the one that he was holding himself was a little small one as well.
So there were 2 guns, were there?
Yeah, I thought there were 2 gunmen because there was a gun that was dropped on the pavement side of the car, and the other gunman was the other side of the car trying to get in, and he had a gun which he was firing at the same time. So I thought that there were 2 gunmen. I hadn't seen the other one run away or anything like that, so I can't say definitely, but I thought there were 2.
What can you tell us about the gunman, the man who was holding the gun? What can you tell us about him?
Nothing very much. He was tall. You don't notice things; it happens so quickly. He was very tall, and he seemed to be quite thin. I think he was wearing a sort of Macintosh or something. I honestly couldn't say. I couldn't really recognise him. And he was just shaking the door really madly, and firing.
How quickly did police who were near the scene or on the scene, or Princess Anne's bodyguards, how quickly were they reacting to the situation?
It seemed to me like an awful long time. Perhaps when you're in the middle of something, time either goes faster or quicker, I don't know, slower. But it seemed to me that I think it all happened about 10 to 8. It must have been about 10 to 8. And they didn't arrive until about... Well, at least 9 o'clock.
What else did you say to Princess Anne? She said she was all right immediately. You spoke to her, and Mark Phillips was protecting her with his body. Is that right?
Yeah, and then he looked up, and I said, "All right," and he said, "Yeah." She was all right. And then somebody held the door open for them the other side, one of the policemen, I suppose, or the detectives, and they got out, and they were whistling to a car, and they went off.
And taken straight off to the palace.
And I suppose taken to the palace, yes. I think they were very brave, actually, because there was a time when they were completely on their own in this car. There was nobody with them at all. They were completely on their own, and this maniac was rattling the door and shooting and trying to get in, and they were right over the other side of the car trying to get away from this gun. It must have been terribly scaring for them, I think.
Miss
Terrifying.
Scott, thank you very much.
Finally, in case you missed the beginning of our bulletin tonight, there has been an assassination attempt on Princess Anne and Mark Phillips, but the couple escaped unhurt. 4 people, however, were shot and injured when their car was ambushed near Buckingham Palace. There were 2 policemen, the royal chauffeur, and a man who was passing in a taxi. A man is helping the police with their inquiries at Cannon Road Police Station. More details of any new developments will come after this programme, and of course, we'll have a lot more to say in the first report tomorrow morning. For the moment, good night.